Good morning, everybody. We'll be just getting started in a moment. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. I just awaiting a few other people joining us. Okay, so I think we'll get cracking on. So thank you everyone for joining us today, where we're going to be talking all about building and sustaining thriving online communities. Thanks, Alan, if we move on. So just some housekeeping rules really just for the session today. The session is being recorded and it will be available on demand afterwards. So please, share with your colleagues or go back and have a look through the session. You'll see there's a Q&A box, and that's for any questions that you have for any of the speakers throughout the session. Please do put in as many questions as you have. We want this to be as interactive as possible, and we'll make sure we cover off as many of them as we can. You'll see there's a chat box. That's really for any more sort of technical problems or queries. So if you could put those in there, and then we will also get back to you on those. So I'm Joyce Harman. I am Head of Client Services at Hart, and I have a fantastic panel of people joining me this morning. So if I just ask you all to introduce yourself. So Kaylee.
Hi all, sorry, technical problem clicking the button there. I'm Kaylee, I'm Head of Membership and Projects at British Mensa.
Perfect, thank you Kaylee. And Mark?
Yeah, good morning, Joyce. Thanks. I'm Mark Eichler, the Chief Product Officer with Kantaris.
Fantastic. And Alan?
Morning, everyone. My name's Alan Prestrello. I'm from Hart, and really looking forward to discussing online communities and how they grow and how we get them to grow and thrive.
Perfect, thank you. So just moving on to quickly, for those of you who are not aware of Hart Square, just really focusing on that we are a consultancy practice, and really what we're all about is enabling digital and change capability within the non-for-profit sector. We've been doing this for over 15 years now, and the team has over 165 years of experience, which is a bit of a frightening stat, but I'm not telling you how many of those are mine. And then just really looking at sort of the areas that we cover as an organisation. We really focus on the whole journey of projects, looking at strategy, selection process, implementation and realisation, so all about the benefits. So enough about Hart Square. I'm now going to hand over to Alan.
Thanks, Joyce. So I think everyone knows the topic we're discussing today is about how to create and grow thriving online communities. And I think where I wanted to sort of set the scene is kind of discussing the value of online communities. So for those of you who are on the call of a certain age may remember the phrase, "If you build it, they will come," which is a great phrase from the 1989 movie Field of Dreams, where a farmer decides that it's a really good idea to build a baseball pitch in his backyard. And so this was quite analogous with kind of how people could see, the introduction of online communities. And the simple phrase, "If you build it, if you offer an online community, people will come, they will engage, they will stay engaged." I think that's a lofty idea, but I think what we'll talk about today is about what it takes to actually make one of those community offerings thrive. And so I thought the following quote from a guy called Seth Godin was really interesting. "Build it and they will come" only works in the movies. Social media, and I think community platforms are kind of analogous with that at the moment, is a build it, nurture it, engage them, and they may come and stay. And I think that's really a good way of illustrating the fact that if you're going to consider making an investment in an online community and the platform, that you do need to recognize that it does take a strategy and it takes a lot of work and effort. And I think that's what we'll hear from our guests today. But the effort is worth it because the rewards are there. And so when we think about rewards in terms of engaging with your members or stakeholders, volunteers, donors in virtual communities, I thought this was also a really nice quote from Howard Rheingold. "Virtual communities enable us to do the things that we are hardwired to do, to learn together, to collaborate, and to create new possibilities." So if anyone's looking for, books about like online communities, online engagement, Both Howard and Seth Godin have some very, very interesting books. They've been around for a very long time. These are people who've been at the sort of dawn of the internet age and have been talking about these topics for a very long time. So I thought it was useful to look at kind of the value of community platforms. And so we looked at various reports on online communities. And I thought some of these stats were quite interesting just to illustrate the value of online community platforms. 76% of people surveyed in a American Society of Association Executives, which is kind of the umbrella organization for associations in the US, 76% of their members say that the ability to connect and network is a primary reason for joining a membership body, which I think is a really high number. Now, obviously, they're talking about in-person events. They're talking about lots of different ways of connecting, but obviously an online community is another strand and one way of augmenting that. 57% of people surveyed in a European Union agency for cybersecurity, which I thought was an interesting stat. 57% of organizations surveyed thought that an online community was actually a safer, more GDPR compliant way of engaging with your various communities than social media platforms. And I think that's interesting because an online community platform is something that you own, you control. You're not at the whims of various organizations or different individuals who control those social media platforms and can decide what messages do and don't go out. Additionally, what I thought was really interesting is that 40% of communities that have a very clear set of objectives will have a higher rate in achieving their objectives. So I think that, the concept of just putting out an online community, because of all the things we've just said, but it does require you to have a strategy and have a very clear set of goals and objectives with your online community for it to succeed. And I think we'll hear that today from Kaylee. 30% of organizations that implemented some sort of peer-to-peer support community offering, and this comes from a survey of customer support leaders from 2023, state that they can lower their overall costs of support by about 30%. So if you're thinking about people looking for information, and yes, they can find that information on their website, but if you're part of a community, people can ask their peers for advice and guidance. And I think if anyone's ever used Reddit, this is a great example of the power of a community platform that doesn't require you to do all the heavy lifting yourself. However, we will hear from Kaylee and Mark about things that you do need to do to harness that power and to be able to make sure that you're delivering them on the promise. So further sort of detailing out sort of some thoughts in terms of what we thought was a useful way of illustrating why is it worth investing in community platforms. So looking at it from an engagement perspective, members and stakeholders feel more engaged when they're part of a community. Now, that doesn't mean that that's just an online community, but then they feel that you're part of something. And anyone who takes part in a sport knows immediately what this is like. In fact, partners of people who take part in sport know more about what this is like, because as soon as a person starts taking up, sport like cycling, etc., the conversation starts to move to that and people start creating new tribes. Increased loyalty leads to increased retention. So if you're looking at it from a membership and a renewal perspective, retention is a very important thing, and establishing the added value, which we'll talk about in a bit, these are great ways of ensuring that you keep your engagement high with your members or donors. It's another highly engaged channel that you can use to communicate and to cross-promote. So if you're looking to promote other events, having an online community is another channel of engaged, focused people that will see those messages. And this is an excellent way of ensuring that volunteers have a greater sense of connection to the purpose that you're asking them to volunteer for. So providing them with a community that gives them access to beyond just their volunteering engagement tends to increase the engagement overall. Adding value, specifically from a membership perspective, offering a gated community that is only available as a value add to your membership offering is another mechanism for justifying, the membership value that you present. This is also great for volunteering, as we've just spoken about, and these are GDPR safe alternatives to social media. So social media is great and it certainly has its place, but this is a safer space and in a way that you can control it for doing more than just allowing, whoever shouts loudest to be heard. You can offer exclusive content, resources, and benefits to your members, and you control the brand experience, which is something that you don't always get to do with your social media channels. An area that's often overlooked when people are assessing online community platforms, from my perspective, is the value of data and insights that you can then draw on. So having an online community with engaged community members gives you another point that you can use to assess and present data to understand how your engaged users and your non-engaged users are interacting with you. And I think we might see some of that coming through in the case study that Kaylee will talk about. You can use that data to then further enhance your membership offerings. So we have seen a number of scenarios where membership surveys have gone out, people have said they value this, then checking that and validating that within the community to make sure that there is actual value in it before someone goes on a path and creating and building and offering a service that isn't actually going to add value. You'll have the data and you'll be able to question it in a more controlled manner from your community. It offers you a more acute way of segmenting and targeting personalized communication, because you will know everything about those people. If they're using your community platform, they are more than just an email address on your database. And you provide a direct line to provide member feedback. So you can get member feedback very quickly. If you've launched a new initiative and it's not going down well, your community will tell you very quickly. And that allows you the opportunity to respond and adapt to be part of that. From an effectiveness perspective, peer-to-peer support, as we've already spoken about, getting other members to provide support to members, that obviously is preferable if those are, people that have passed some sort of certification or qualification to provide that information. And the community platform should encourage that, and also make it clear that these people are, moderators, or they're, champions, and they've got more experience in the topic they're discussing. And it allows you the ability to create informal leaders across your community. It's a self-sustaining collaborative opportunity to enable mentorship as well. So you will find the opportunity to identify people in your community who want to play a more active role in whatever your, it may be, a membership body, or it might be a charity. You will find people, advocates, who you can call on to further your cause, and you will find them most effectively in that online community platform. So I thought that was a great way of summarizing what we thought were some of the highest sort of value adds for investing in community platforms. But over to our poll now to see what our audience thinks.
Thanks, Alan. So yeah, so just put up a quick poll really to get a better idea of who's with us today and kind of where you are. So I'm just going to let that run just for a few seconds more, just to see where everybody is. Very interesting mix at the moment coming in. Quite a few people have an online community. Some have had, but not successful. So I'm just going to let that run for another second, and I will share the results. Okay, so let me just end the poll and share the results. So actually quite an interesting spread, it has to be said. Really, lots of people. I mean, the main winning one is that have an online community, but equally closely followed by, had one, didn't really work, or evaluating options would be the kind of predominant one. Mark, I don't know if you wanted to kind of quickly comment on that.
Yeah, I think that this is pretty common what we see. I think that, what we're going to talk about today is about coming forward with an online community strategy that includes representation of the culture in the membership body. I think that the baseball field, which gave me memories of home, Alan, thank you for that. It really does, that point on if you build it, they will come. Well, we will talk more about how making sure they are welcomed into that space, making sure that it is oriented towards value and the culture of the membership body, and how it is managed. And I think that Kaylee and Kath and the Mensa team are really good examples as to some of the best practices in action.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is a perfect segue into let me stop sharing and to bring in Kaylee, so we can really start talking about the case study and what you guys did. So I suppose, Kaylee, really, I suppose, can you tell us just a bit quickly about Mensa, but also, why did you decide to embark on this project?
Yeah, no, not a problem. Thank you for everyone joining today. So British Mensa is a membership organisation, a society for people within the top 2% that they have to pass a test, within the top 2% of IQ. So we have a very, very, very varied membership base. And we started a bit of a transformation journey. We've been around for over 75 years. We started a transformation journey in 2021 to modernise a society to make it fit for the future. Was essentially the brief that we were given by the board at that point. We did an awful lot. We did our CRM, our CMS, and our website towards the end of 2022. which then led us into, you know, organically thinking, what's next? What is the way that we're going to engage with our members on a more personal, one-to-one level, and hence communities kind of came out of that. One of our key objectives, I'm going to read it from here, excuse me for looking down, is to provide a stimulating intellectual and social environment for its members. And that fundamentally was the key kind of, you know, we saw communities kind of really fulfilling that objective in its entirety. Our members love to chat. So that's kind of where the project started from as a bit of a transformation journey. Yeah, it got us to today, launching launching our community, and it being largely successful. We've still got a lot more work to do, but it's been a really eye-opening experience so far.
And I love, Kaylee, that you kind of just said, make it sound like it's really easy. Oh, we did the CRM and we did the website, and that is an awful lot of work and an awful lot of commitment. So, you know, just not to gloss over that, what it took to get there. And before I suppose we move on to key learnings, Mark, I suppose for you coming in on a project like this, you know, having a client who's got some very clear objectives, you know, how important was that for you?
It was perfect. I think that any community, online community is a very, you know, it's a very squishy term, but online community platforms are very powerful technologies that can be oriented towards different goals and objectives. And when we started the conversation with Mensa on the community piece, they came with very specific ideas as to what they would like to achieve. And we knew that they would be an ideal partner from the perspective of goals, outcomes, and ideas as to the strategy. And that sharing on iterating on best practices is really what made the project for us a pleasure to participate in, and one that we're really proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so I suppose moving on to kind of thinking about then the sort of the kind of the next stage and kind of the key learnings. I suppose maybe Kaylee, starting with you, having, you know, gone through this project, you know, what were the things that you kind of were important that you've learned that you again might do differently next time? I suppose, what would be your kind of key learnings at this stage?
Yeah, I mean, you know, thank you for this next slide. So, I mean, you know, we went through using Hart Square, went through a whole procurement exercise for our CRM, our CMS, and our website provider. And through that process, actually, we were introduced to Cantarus in particular throughout that process. Now, we parked it at that point because we had enough on our plates. We were doing enough with the rest of the transformation that we were doing. But Cantarus always, or communities then, always sat in the back of our minds as the next iterative step. So, you know, we've got here key learnings of guided by experience, partner, and strategy. Now, that is fundamentally what has helped support our project, is having somebody in that field understanding and guiding us. You know, many organizations, we all think we're the first, we all think we're going to do it ourselves. Nobody else has had the experience of problems that we have. But there are every single one of us in this room today have very similar problems, and I think, you know, having that partner is really vital. I think, you know, I talk a lot right now about, you know, something at launch. We launched in a soft launch in January of this year. We knew we hadn't launched with a finished product. It's that iterative process, making sure that you're forever looking at what you're doing and not thinking, I'm done, the project's done. Mark, you can disappear now. Cantarus, you can disappear now. You know, it really is about making sure that you have that constant review and, you know, always going back and listening to what your members are coming back in and saying. And that's been really successful for us. You know, there's been a lot of changes that we've made post-launch in this short amount of time because of the member ideas that are coming through. So yeah, I mean, those are two really kind of key big ones for me, and I'm sure Mark will talk about this, because I think I heard this a lot throughout the project, but the seeding and the sprouting of that community before people get in there is vitally important. You know, we had a team of our volunteers that came in that very early day. So talk about staging your launch. We had a team of volunteers going in, providing that content, engaging with each other right at the very start. So then when the rest of our members came in, they already had conversations going on. They could already see the way that the community could work. You know, we were posting videos. Oh, so I can post a video. It was that sort of experience, which actually, you know, Mark and the team were really, really fundamental in kind of providing guidance on that.
Yeah, no, Mark, absolutely come in on your thoughts on that, because I think that whole staging and phasing is really
Yeah, sure. So we describe online communities as throwing a garden party. And just as you want to bring people to your garden when it's filled with flowers and lush growth and fruit they can pluck from the trees, you don't want, you know, in the same way, you want the community space to be representing what you want to have there for them, things they can benefit from, people they recognize and want and value in interaction with, and also the content and the engagement opportunities that represent an enjoyable experience. You wouldn't invite people over to a garden party and expect them to bring seeds and expect them to enjoy looking at dirt patches and think about the possibilities. You want to bring them into an environment that is welcoming, that is demonstrating value, that is offering a new member benefit set, and giving them some things that they can immediately appreciate and value, with the membership body's culture represented, with the membership body's brand represented, so that sense of place is there. And then also the folks that are influencers, is what, you know, the industry term is, people that are respected voices that are known by others across the membership body, in a position to be representing there and saying, yes, I am here. Because those influencers, those senior folks, when they are there, it kind of gives permission to others to say, okay, this space is actually being adopted. This is worthy of my participation. And maybe I can learn some things here, and maybe we can have some fun here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some great questions coming in. I know we've a dedicated Q&A thing, but I want to bring in a couple of them now. One that's come in is, it would be great to understand how engagement in communities was initiated and maintained. How much work do Mensa staff put into it? Or is it a member volunteer led and driven? I know you've touched on it a bit, but Kaylee, do you want to pick that up first?
Yeah, it's a bit of both, actually. I think, you know, so we have a really, really strong team of volunteers within Mensa that, you know, are responsible for different sections of our organisation. So the engagement comes from them largely. However, I am in there every single day, posing questions, answering questions, making sure there's a presence. It's not just myself, we've got a member engagement manager as well, which has a focus on the community. So in terms of that engagement, it comes from multiple different places. A resource has to come from multiple different places. We would suggest, I mean, I've said this before, we dedicate around 10 hours per week to making sure we're in the community and we're there and present, and the rest of that is done by our volunteers. I think you could do more. You could use a lot more resource and really sort of you know, drive that. But we're lucky in the sense that we do have a lot of engaged members that, you know, they come with their own ways of wanting to communicate, which is what our members need, providing that stimulating conversation. So a bit of both is my answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's really helpful. And I also like that, a tangible, you know, 10 hours. I say you'd like more, but 10 hours, that's really useful. Mark, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think that engaging the volunteers is always important. But when you're an affinity group, which is what Mensa is, and not a professional body, you have to kind of understand your audience and make sure that the folks that are going to help lead in some areas of conversation and of member value, the conversations that Mensa members join to have with other Mensa members, that it's clear from the beginning that that is there. And so from that perspective, there are things, especially for Mensa, that volunteers can do, member volunteers can do, that Mensa staff cannot. And for any membership body, and I've certainly worked in some where this is the situation, right? Working with an organization in the U.S. where they were a kind of engineer. If the answers were coming from a member who was a certified engineer in that practice, that would have a different kind of resonance than if the staff said something or recommended something. So understanding the opportunity to present to your members who are volunteers, that this is a space that is going to allow them to shine, allow them to engage with the people that are going to help, their tribe, so to speak, giving them the incentive and the idea that this is a valuable space that is unique and new, and getting those volunteers to lead is typically not a big lift, but it's really essential. And especially for an affinity group like Mensa, and a professional membership body, that same construct is there. But it's more of a professional content-led construct than the deeper cultural experience that I think Mensa is facilitating.
Yeah. Sorry, Joy. And I think just to add to that, sorry, just to dip in there, I think, that engagement with the volunteers is critical in that sense, because you have to give the tools that you have available to the volunteers to be able to go and run with that. We have all of that resource internally, but externally you've got to give that out to the volunteers. So as part of that, we had to do an awful lot of engagement with the volunteers to get them to understand the community and what the community could do. So
yeah, and on that point, that's where a lot of organizations, if you build it, it falls down specifically, because so many organizations have special interest groups. They have segments, they have committees, they have regions. These are all common constructs in membership bodies, regardless of affinity or professional body, et cetera. But if you don't train those chairs and help them understand, this is where you can post videos, this is where you can get the polls out there that you can allow different people to answer, this is where you can incent these kinds of conversations, this is where you have tools to mark something as answered. All those kinds of tools, if you just say, hey, chair, community space, go, they're going to be like, I don't get this. But if you give them a little bit of care and feeding, and you demonstrate in the environment the power of the platform and all the things it can do, which we describe as modeling, right? Show the possible, then they're going to be understanding and valuing the power that it brings forward and utilizing it. And that's a really key piece, is to make sure those volunteers get the nurturing that they need so that they can go forward and lead.
Yeah, absolutely. Which kind of links into another question that's come in, which I wanted to just cover quickly. So any tips on how to get a smooth online member joining experience straight into the community experience? Basically, a question about a good login / onboarding process. So, yeah.
Kaylee, do you want to go first on this one? I know we talked a lot about this in the formative bit.
Yeah, I mean, this was key for us. We wanted that seamless journey through. We'd implemented a new portal, we'd implemented all of that stuff. We wanted it all to work together. We've got an API link into our CRM, into our portal, which essentially means that a member, when they log in to the same space, single sign-on, the same space they log into every single day they were used to logging in, also is access to the community as well. And that is uplifted from our CRM. So that whole join process, there's no manual intervention, there's nothing that we need to do. And again, I think that's essential for really kind of bringing people in and making sure they have that seamless journey from one space.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, if there's anything else you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, single sign-on and that CRM integration, AMS integration, those are really key pieces. For different organizations, they will have different capacity to pre-populate the community. For some organizations, they will examine, right, the membership contract that they have with members and determine whether or not they feel they have the rights to bring their members in and pre-populate the community by virtue of the data agreements that they have in place with their members. The online community does include a directory, right? So just as a directory has no value until your members are adequately represented in that space, that same construct can be there with online community. So that's one of the things that we do recommend, is that single sign-on, CRM integration, verify the membership, yes. If pre-population, especially for your leadership segments, is possible, we advise membership bodies to consider that. And then in terms of a seamless join path, cross promotion, right? You can highlight in your Facebook groups that you can highlight in your Facebook groups that there's great conversations happening in the community. You can put content on the primary web presence saying, hey, here are the conversations that are, and here's the space that you can visit as a member. So lots of different strategies there, but reinforcement of the value across your marketing estate does make sense as well.
Absolutely. So I want to make sure we move on to achievements, because obviously it's not all about learnings, it's about achievements. So I suppose, yeah, Kelly, starting with you, for you, what are the biggest achievements to date?
I mean, you know, we saw, I mean, I think I heard Kantaris describe it as an explosion of content when we first went live. Now, our members absolutely love to talk and engage with each other, which, you know, has helped us on our journey within the community. But we've had a really, really positive engagement and activity going on within the community. You know, we have, I think Mark referred to it yesterday, we have members building their own limericks. You know, we've got a thread that's already I think 1,000 posts deep with these limericks that our members are coming up with line by line, which is you know, we've had some really, really great engagement, you know. And I think when I talk about our members, we have members from the age of 2 to 102 with interests that range from a cat special interest group to an AI special interest group, so a really, really varied and diverse group of people. So to see some of these threads come alive and some of these conversations taking place has been really, really fantastic. So I think the engagement levels have been particularly pleasing for us as an organisation. It was one of the key things we wanted to achieve, really. And, you know, talking about, Mark referenced tribes earlier, we hear that a lot. We've heard that a lot throughout the implement, you know, when we were working with our volunteers ahead of launch. I joined Mensa because I want to find my tribe. I want to find my people. And you can see that happening. We've had new events pop up because of a conversation between a couple of different people that has now encouraged a social interaction, an in-person social interaction, you know. So we're really seeing that it moving beyond the community, which I think is fantastic. So that's been really, really powerful for us to see and for us to be involved in. And there is still more to do, and I think we will see that grow and grow, which will be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And to say, yeah, not finished yet. Mark, from your point of view.
Yeah, I think that a big part of the success was the platform allowing easy, simple 2-minute, 1-minute changes to iterate on the platform based on what members were saying. Oh, you don't have this space, or oh, these two spaces actually have a lot in common. That would probably be the critical mass to put them together. That kind of input from members and responding to them and addressing the things that they have said was a big part of the success of it. So that iteration and catering to the members demonstrated within the platform was really important. But in terms of the metrics, 15% of members making posting actions is tremendous. It's atypical. Usually a membership body would be happy to have 3 to 5% of its members making a post in a first 3-month period, for example. But the volume of posts here is really high. The quality of those posts is spectacular. Kaylee's mentioning people are collaboratively writing limericks, and that's great. People are putting, you know, sharing their morning Wordle experiences in there, because there's a little hack for Wordle where you can share what your success ratio was, how many tries you'd used with a color coding thing, but you don't have to tell people what the word was and give spoilers. There are all these little wrinkles to the platform that their members have found benefit in using. And I think that is all super positive and something that's been a real delight to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, again, it's, you know, as I was saying earlier with Kaylee about, you know, this whole achievement of all of the work that you've been doing over the last couple of years. And as Mark has said, 15%, that's phenomenal. Like, it really is a huge, huge success. And I just love that the members are using it for a useful area, but for fun and interaction. Like, it's really been used for what a community is supposed to be about. So that's fantastic. I'm going to move on to questions, because we've got lots of questions which cover kind of more of the achievements and things like that. So I'm going to move over to the Q&A part. So bear with me 1 second. So is there a spread in demographics in community users? Do you find younger people use the community more or not? we have an average age of a farmer of 65 to 70, but we have a challenge engaging with younger people, and this is from the NFU, National Farmers Union. Kaylee, do you want to go first? Or?
Yeah, so again, actually, you know, we have more members still over the age of 65 than under 35. But actually within the community, we've seen a really, really good spread. We do definitely still have our kind of our longer standing older members in that community kind of taking part and interacting with different things, but we have a specific space within our community for young members. It's said that and we've always had a separate kind of grouping for that. So we actually have, I think we've got a fair few. I mean, it's within over, I think it's about 500 of our kind of younger members that are within that space, and really kind of actively taking part. So you know, it's a really diverse mix. And are we doing anything right now to specifically tailor content for those individuals? Probably not. And that's kind of our next stage of really engaging with the different demographics within the community, to really kind of tailor their personal experience a little bit more. But we have a really good mix. But all I can say is make you have somebody there responsible for that. We have a young Mensa volunteer coordinator who is responsible for driving content, engaging with those individuals, and that's what we do. That's what we've done for the community, and we'll continue to do.
Yeah, and if I could just follow up on that point, typically a community strategy will start with a population that needs to have, ideally could be assisted or provided with additional resources. If younger members are a specific target, a community strategy to address their needs is typically includes things like facilitating content that people need on those early stages of their career, helping them understand what that career journey can be and why membership is an important piece of that career journey. And obviously engaging with people that are designated as mentors is something that can be very important, to actually have a designated population of people that are well-credentialed senior folks that have lived the dream from the career perspective, especially for professional societies that are making themselves available for questions and career support guidance. All those pieces are there. Also, it's pretty common for membership bodies to include job postings and discussions about job postings in the community itself. Like, this job, I'm making you aware, it's we have this opening at our company. Those kinds of things, and catering towards helping young people manage the anxiety points in their earliest days in a profession specifically, can be really powerfully addressed in the community platform. But that is a point for the strategy to bring those points forward rather than just turning it on and hope it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, Mark sums it up really nicely. Moving on to the next question. Kelly, I know you've touched on this briefly, but to expand on it, what was the implementation project like? How long did it run? So I suppose, really thinking right from the start, we're thinking about doing community, right to kind of where you are now and plans going forward. Sort of, what does that full timeline look like?
So, I mean, we really started thinking about communities. It would have been in January 2022. Obviously, as I alluded to, we parked it. We knew we wanted to do it, but we parked it for very, very good reason, to get the rest of our project over the line. We then re-engaged with a couple of providers in June time, I think, in 2023.
About a year ago.
Where we started again to explore our options and explore what was out there, and it all kept coming back to Mark. It always does. It's always about Mark. And I think we could see how Kantaras could support us strategically in terms of how they could support us with what we wanted to do with growing our community, and hence why we chose Kantara. So we really started the project. We kicked off in August of 2023, and we built the community over over the next couple of months. We got our volunteers involved in November of 2023 to really start kind of getting into the platform, understanding the platform, engaging with the platform. And then we soft launched the community in January of this year. And that was to our volunteers and a slightly wider group. So kind of really engaged, kind of key members that we launched it to in January. Went a little bit wider in February, and then eventually it opened up to everybody. So we staged that over a couple of months. Again, as we've alluded to before, all around that seeding and sprouting and making sure that people could understand what the community was about. So that was the totality of our project, really. But it was, yeah. It was a quick win for us. We knew it was going to be something that was going to be really powerful.
Yeah, thanks, Kaylee. I would say that the parts of it that parts of it that also to describe are the trainings that were provided. We were not just training Mensa staff on how to use the platform. We were training their volunteers. We were running those focus group sessions to understand how to iterate on the community and make sure that those leaders had the tools that they needed and make sure they knew they were backstopped. So it's very much not, right, turn it on, hand the keys over to the organization and watch them go. Training is a big part of that implementation, and that happened over the final month and a half. Training the staff initially, certainly occurred as well. The other part was the strategy consideration and collaboratively developing the strategy. I think there was a lot of good sharing on this. There are two kind of specific concerns that we try to help on membership bodies understand as we're developing the strategy together. One is over segmentation, and one is over securitization. And they kind of go together. Over segmentation is where you've got too many distinct segments and not enough leadership to ensure that there's value in those individual segments. And so typically we recommend on the segments that go live to be really profoundly robust in terms of demonstration of the content and leadership of an influencer who is going to guide the conversations and be there to answer questions. We iterated on our typical strategy in working with Kaylee and with Kath and saying, okay, you do need to have these. They said we need to have more segments represented even before we have the leadership in place and the content in place. And we said that can work, but you need to have enough robust segments and content and leadership in enough segments so that your potential segment leaders can see what they're missing on the other segments that are not yet fully represented. So that was part of the strategy. And then the other part was to ensure that we weren't over securitizing, meaning we're not going to hide community content from people that have not expressly said, I want to be access to this. Good example is that Wordle group, right? There is no data point, despite doing a full digital transformation. There is no data point in Mensa's CRM data as to who's a Wordler. So you don't make the opt-in area. So, hey, if you want to get involved with our Wordle group, check it out, click here, and then you will see it. The content needs to lead to the subscription and the interest there. And because the community platform makes it painless to ingest lots of stuff in digests, not individual emails that go out for every post. It makes it easy for people to see the vibrancy of the membership body and to go to the value centers when they are aware of all the potential value centers. And that's a really key value point for a lot of organizations, is that there are a lot of membership bodies that produce ridiculous amounts of new content, but they're not in a position to help their members understand all the vibrancy and the rate of creation of that new content. Community can put it in a very browsable, simple environment. So if you just say, hey, this white paper just got released, this press release just went out, this policy just got announced, you're in a position for your members to be aware, dive in if they want, but that awareness is really valuable of its own accord.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to move on. This is quite a long question, so bear with me, but it's a good one. We're currently undergoing our review process of what's working and what isn't working. We have networks where people can join and engage in online meetings to discuss best practice challenges, etc. I'm starting to realize that most of our members are starting to experience survey fatigue. We obviously rely on feedback from our members to inform our future direction, including our annual members feedback survey, amongst other surveys we circulate each month. are there any ways we could collect feedback without relying on methods like surveys, for example, SurveyMonkey, Microsoft Forms, etc.? So other ways of collecting feedback that's, not surveys. I mean, Kaylee, is there anything that you've kind of been doing around collecting that feedback?
Yeah, I mean, I go back to that engagement within the community, because you're collecting that feedback all of the time. That's coming in and that's informing what you're doing. So, I suppose, we use surveys. We've just done our annual our annual membership survey. We use surveys to collect that, but I do think survey fatigue is a real thing, and I think you only capture it. I think you only capture bits within that, whereas I do genuinely believe, kind of being in the community and seeing what's being talked about, seeing, so when we put up our reporting dashboard, the kind of the comments that come from that around where our members see, we've got a fantastic thread at the moment about the kind of the growth of Mensa and capturing that 1.3 other million people that could join Mensa. And it's those sorts of things that we're going to be building back into our new 3-year strategy, those sorts of ideas that are going to come from there. But it's organic. Members are just discussing it organically, and hence, that feedback is coming to us in that way, which I find really powerful. In something that, we had a closed Facebook group, something we never really found from our closed Facebook group, that although they were talking to each other, our members, we weren't getting that sort of direct feedback, but that direct feedback coming from the community, looking at conversations and reading those conversations and reforming things that we're doing now, which is really powerful.
Yeah. And if I could talk about the fatigue aspect. So if the fatigue is about people saying, I'm just kind of tired of using the community, I think that fatigue is often reflecting either an architecture or a community product where you're requiring your members to go browse, right? You're requiring them to hunt for the gold rather than putting them in a position where that gold is delivered to them, because maybe you're not using the data to inform what your summaries would be for your members. But in terms of ensuring the community value is there, that the value of the content is what you would use to combat that fatigue and the ease of access for it. And that's why we're big fans of, using digests that are weekly or perhaps monthly, so that if there is content that's of value, it's easily browsable, easily skimmable, but it's not requiring people to go in and find this post versus that post, or try to research, right? Ideally, the community product is one that is going to allow people to say more of this, less of that. Then the Discourse Forums platform that we implemented for Mensa certainly has those features.
I'm just conscious of time, and we've got lots of questions. Some that have been kind of touched on already, answered. So I'm just going to pick some that I think that hasn't been covered as such yet. May I ask how you encouraged volunteers? Oh, sorry, it's just moved. Sorry, I ask how you encourage volunteers on board to post. As it is it a constant recruitment campaign, or do people tend to stay engaged in that volunteering role? So encouraging volunteers to get on board and keeping them there. So was there a campaign around that?
Yeah, so I mean, we've always had a really active volunteer group. Again, we're really lucky and privileged in that way. We've always had a really engaged, but that has taken time. So that's taken time to develop up as well within the community in particular. This is a different way of working to what our volunteers are used to. So what we worked with our volunteers right from the very start as part of our whole transformation. Actually, our volunteers were front and center of what we really kind of wanted to achieve, and how we wanted those to engage and be involved in the organisation in general. We, on launch of the community, we actually changed the roles to become more community focused, and that engagement within the community. But it's that I talk about engagement a lot, but it's that constant engagement, that constant communication, what we're trying to achieve, why we want to achieve it, and what we see the value of our volunteers delivering that it is. And and our volunteers have really taken to it. So you ask, it is a constant battle. We're always recruiting for volunteers. We have a number of different volunteer roles. We have over 100 SIGs, special interest groups, and each one of those has a leader attached to those. So we are forever recruiting for that and engaging with people, and that is happening through everyday conversation, through volunteers engaging with other members, saying, hey, why don't you get involved, why don't you come on board? But I think, you know, it's getting them involved right from the very start of anything that you're doing, getting them to understand what it is you're trying to achieve, and then setting them some very clear objectives as to what we want to see, and that seems to have really worked for us.
Yeah, the volunteering part for any membership body is typically essential. Membership bodies are typically run by volunteers. They're the trustees, they're the board members, they're the SIG chairs, they're the committee chairs, they are the regional chairs. And so when bringing forth online community, what we can advise is that there are carrots and sticks. The carrots in the community piece being, look how good this platform is. You will have the ability to interact with folks easily. The staff will be aware. We can support you better. Bring your official segment actions and committee meetings, et cetera, to be represented in the digital spaces that the community facilitates. And the other part is on compliance. GDPR compliance and other data use compliance and best practices are in evidence in the communities that we support for membership bodies. And so part of the story can be, you know, SIG chairs, committee chairs, you need to stop using email because those email lists being on your personal machines is outside of strict GDPR compliance. This is the platform that we're using for you to facilitate conversations and scheduling of meetings and work and having a collaborative workspace for the folks that you're supporting as a chair. Use this platform, please. We will support you in that. And please, let's refrain from using those email lists and get those deleted off your machine. So it's that kind of approach where you can present the community as a set of opportunities, but also a place where best practices are in evidence. And in terms of recruiting volunteers to continue to be in those leadership roles, people that are active in the community are really great candidates to approach for filling those leadership positions, to get some fresh blood on the board, to have those younger members maybe represented on that young professionals group or whatever it might be. The community gives you the power to understand who's engaging, what their aptitudes are, how much they're respected, and then maybe focus in on them when you have recruiting drives for bringing new leaders into the fold.
Absolutely. So we've lots more questions to say. We will answer any of the questions that we don't get time to cover, and we'll send them out and follow up with afterwards. So I want to cover 2 quick questions. So it's quick answers. This one's been kind of half answered, but I wanted to cover the first part of it. Which channels did your member use to meet and communicate as a community before the initiative? I'm going to focus on that part of the question. I just think it's quite interesting. Quick answer, Kaylee, if you can remember.
Yeah, so we had a closed Facebook group. We had a number of different, so we had regional Facebook groups and a closed Facebook group. So that was the predominant thing that we had. We still have that. We haven't switched that off. And naturally, people from the community are now becoming our advocates in Facebook, saying, "Come on over to the community. You know, this is where everything's happening." So you know, Facebook was what we used. It worked. We had it for a number of years. It worked, and our members engaged. However, we very, very quickly took over. So we have around 2,000 of our members within our Facebook community right now, and our community very, very quickly took over that. So that was really interesting to kind of see how quickly the community took off.
Thank you, Mark. I don't know if you want a 1-sentence thoughts on that, or.
No, I would say that social media story is one that we're very familiar with. We typically see social media platforms as more threatening for membership bodies in terms of retention and participation. Actively managing a closed Facebook group with no CRM integration is a nightmare, so it typically doesn't happen. So people remain in there without paying their membership fees, et cetera. So Facebook, LinkedIn, et cetera, we typically encourage folks to use those as marketing platforms to help people understand the quality of conversation and quality of assets and resources and population are better in the community platforms.
Perfect. And then last question before I hand back to Alan, and Mark, you're not allowed to answer this one. So the question is, I'm interested in knowing which community platform software you choose to build the Mensa community on and why. So a Kaylee question. Quick summary. Why did you go with the tech you went with?
So we chose Kantaris, who use Discourse. So we have Discourse as our community, and actually it was the most adaptable. So in terms of what we wanted to see and how we wanted to iterate, we've talked about iterate a lot, the ease of use, and you know, the constant developments. There's a really kind of clear, you know, there's a really good help community for discourse users as well, which is really useful to go in and see best practice, what's going on. But we chose it because we saw it as our gold standard. You know, we'd seen a number of different ones, and we thought the discourse platform was by far the best that we saw.
Perfect, thank you. And on that note, I'm going to hand back to Alan. Oh, you unmute, Alan.
Thanks, Joyce. Just wanted to get things back to the screen share. Give me a second. So some great conversations there, I think, and thank you to our guests for sharing that. So we wanted to just share a couple of things we thought was kind of useful to know in terms of contributions to things not going well, in terms of, you know, things that you want to avoid doing. And this comes from various sources, but 25% of the problem can be not having an engagement strategy. So from my own personal perspective, I think that's something that great to see that Mensa and Kaylee and Kantaris did, was to really focus on the strategy. I have seen a number of times when people launch into these new things, you know, build them out, etc., that people do not come. So if you don't have a strategy, and I think it would be great if you asked your community if they would value it first, and to ensure that there was some buy-in before you went down this road. So that's an important one. Technology infrastructure being the second biggest contributor to things not working. You know, the platform does need to do certain things like be, you know, single sign-on friendly, you know, a couple of points that Mark made. You know, the ability to integrate it with CRM so that you can know whether a person's part of an SIG or not, and then auto-populate and those community groups. So those capabilities around the technology are important. They're not the single biggest thing, but they are really important. And then I think what was interesting for me was content quality, and that is, you know, making sure that there's something interesting for people to come back to. Now, you could argue you can't really control that with a community, but I think you can. And that's about, you know, making sure that you've got the right voices in the room to have the right say. So I think there's some very interesting things there. Value proposition is obviously an important one. And then community and conflict management, that's kind of about the staffing at piece. And that's about having people available to support that. So quick tips for driving communities: define clear objectives, choose the right platform and partner, encourage participation. That's kind of seeding and sprouting. I used to call it stoking the community. Just do what you can to positively encourage that participation. Ensure valuable content is available out there. So, you know, yes, the Sudoku groups are great and the poems and stuff, but also remember your core purpose that, you know, you do probably have. If you've got a very technical membership, then make sure that there are topics there that can be rewarding for people to keep coming back for that technical thing. Really important one: foster a welcoming environment. I have been part of communities myself in a personal capacity where there were a few toxic people, and if the provider of the community doesn't do anything about it, I disengage and I'm done. And it's very hard to get people back. So if you find toxic behavior, you need to have a way to deal with that. You need to facilitate networking, you know, do whatever you can to get people engaging online with your platform. Resource it correctly. I think that's a really top two takeaway from today, is don't just assume that if you put it out there, people will do it. You do need to put some energy and effort behind it. We know that the rewards, the returns are there when you do that. So do definitely do that. Leadership influence is essential, and that's about identifying kind of people who are advocates and are going to be leadership. So your own organization, your own leaders need to be on that community, and they need to be visible. They need to be showing that they're part of it too. They can't be disengaged. But then also finding those key advocates from your community to kind of show that they're also part of it. So leadership is a really important thing. And then, as with anything, but these days in terms of transformation, is audit, adapt, and repeat. Rinse and repeat. Just keep looking at it and analyze whether it's working and how's it going. So I think those are our top tips. And then before we wrap it up, I think I just wanted to leave you with two quotes. And this is from Simon Mainwaring, who's a branding expert and actually written two very interesting books. I haven't read them, but I did read the précis about them. And they are very relevant to this topic. Effectively engaging in communities online is like a discipline that starts by understanding the needs and interests of the community. So in Mensa's case, they really understood what people would want to be there for. They understood the value of the community, and they knew that there was a Just make sure you really understand what your users, your community really want, and then keep adapting that community, and it will thrive. And then kind of finally, just to kind of leave you with one, the future of media isn't just content, it's community, and that's by a guy called Jeff Jarvis. And I haven't really read any of his stuff, but I thought it was a great quote. So on that, trying to keep things to time, I just wanted to say thank you very much to Kaylee and for Mark for providing us with truly engaging content today. I think it looks like we've seen some very, very great, very good questions coming through. Thank you to Joyce for fielding those and managing those. The ones that we didn't get to, we will find a way of typing those up and sending those out to you. You will shortly be getting the survey link, which I will pop into chat, but will come through on the email as well. And we had some resources that we thought might be useful to share, which will pop up now so that you can take a look at those. So thanks again to everybody. There's a QR code there for access to our events hub. We have some great events coming up on AI, on data, on governance, and a number of them are coming through. So please do look out for those on our events hub. And once again, thank you for joining us, and thank you to Kaylee and Mark for being such excellent guests. Thank you, Joyce. And I hope to see you all soon on the next webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.